Welcome to PharmAust's investor update, dated November 2023. My name's Dr. Michael Thurn. I'm the CEO of PharmAust. Over the last 2 weeks, I've been around the Asia Pacific region, visiting existing investors, but also pitching to new investors about the PharmAust story. My background is 25 years in the biotechnology industry. I did, during that time, a stint at the TGA, regulating drugs, but most of that 25 years has been spent in private companies, spun out from the universities around Australia, in particular the University of Queensland. And one particular company that I wanted to highlight is Spinifex Pharmaceuticals. And Spinifex Pharmaceuticals, I was the founding MD of that company, and there's some similarities between Spinifex Pharmaceuticals' lead program in pain and where we are today with PharmAust and motor neuron disease. That particular program at Spinifex was sold for $700 odd million US to Novartis, and that was in the pain space, a CNS application. And there's lots of similarities between that particular program and where we find ourselves today with motor neuron disease program for PharmAust. So today, I'm going to go through the investor update, both on the canine side, but also spend a lot more time talking about motor neuron disease. Just to give you a corporate overview of PharmAust, at the moment we're trading at a market capitalization of around 25 to 30 million. The main business model for PharmAust is repurposing monopental for the treatment of canine cancers and human neurodegenerative diseases. At the moment, we have approximately 1.7 million in cash in the bank, but we expect for this quarter that to grow to around about just under $3 million. We have an R&D tax incentive payment coming in of around $550,000. We also, through the option extension that was put out about a month ago, we have around about 400K coming in from that option extension program. And we also, as you may recall, our phase 1 motor neuron disease study is fully funded by Fight M&D, and the last grant installment of approximately 150K is due this quarter as well. So all in all, by the end of the year, we should have around $2.7 million in cash. This is a non-deal roadshow. We're not out raising money at the moment. We're well positioned with that going into next year with $2.6 million. That will enable us to do the necessary regulatory filings for both our programs in order to get the field study up and running for canine, and also to start our phase 2 study in motor neuron disease. So I mentioned before, the company, the business is all around repurposing an improved veterinary product, monopental. Monopental is used in sheep to remove nematode infestations. We're using monopental, a different mechanism of action in humans, in mammalian cells, for both canine, for the treatment of canine B-cell lymphoma, and also for motor neuron disease. We've got a strong IP position in oncology, and we also have a strong IP position for a range of neurodegenerative diseases, not just motor neuron disease. The good thing about repurposing monopental is that we can leverage data from our canine program into our human program and vice versa, making the advancement of both those programs into a position of being commercialized, a much more convenient and cost-effective and straightforward process, because we can rely on using data for both programs and also existing data that's been built up over time from the approved veterinary product. In terms of our pipeline, we're advancing a human health application, obviously in motor neuron disease, and we're also moving towards the pointy end, so to speak, of the animal health program for canine B-cell lymphoma. And what I want to do first is just talk about animal health program in canine B-cell lymphoma. We announced about just over a month ago that we'd completed our phase 2 study. That phase 2 study now is going to advance into a field study in the US. And that field study will position this particular program for a near-term commercialization event. And that near-term commercialization event is the ability to receive conditional approval from the FDA. So that program is advancing nicely. In terms of motor neuron disease, we're now at a pivotal point in our phase 1 study for motor neuron disease. We announced about 4 weeks ago that we'd completed dosing at the top level for that particular study, and we're on track to release top-line results in Q1 of next year for that particular program. And we'll spend some more time talking about that program in a minute. Just to give you a quick overview of the canine study results, what we found was that we had a very similar efficacy profile to the latest drug that was approved for B-cell and T-cell lymphoma. That particular product, Laverdia, has been around for about 18 to 24 months now, and we showed comparable efficacy to that particular product. The interesting thing about Laverdia is that that product was then sold the US sales rights was sold to Dr Pharmaceutical, one of the main veterinary players out there. That deal that was done was worth approximately $64 million US, and that provides us with a strong data point of where our canine B-cell lymphoma program is heading over the next 12 months. One of the main differences between Laverdia and other treatments out there for B-cell lymphoma is the high quality of life and high quality of function that we observed in animals that were treated with monopental. Often when dogs present themselves with their owners to the vet, and the vet comes back and says, "I'm sorry, your dog is being diagnosed with B-cell lymphoma," the options that are available for treatment are somewhat limited. Generally, the vet says there's 2 options. There's either chemotherapy or there's euthanasia. Most owners decline chemotherapy because of the considerable costs that are involved in treating the dog with chemotherapy. It generally costs around $10,000 to $12,000. There's really very little in between euthanasia and chemotherapy in terms of treatment. What we hope to provide is a new treatment paradigm. And that new treatment paradigm is all around providing a high quality of life and a high quality of function to an animal at home, where you're able to treat that animal at home as opposed to take the animal to a veterinary oncology specialist center for treatment with chemotherapy, and then bring the animal home and be worried about the safety issues for yourself, but also for the dog. The dog generally deteriorates rapidly through the chemotherapy, and then there's a risk to the owner in terms of being able to touch the animal. You basically have to quarantine the animal in case, because if you come in contact with the animal, there is a risk that you can get side effects from the drug through contamination from the cytotoxic agents that are used in the chemotherapy. What we're offering is a tablet, a convenient tablet form for the drug that you can treat the animal at home. It's not a therapeutic product, so there's no issues with regards to having to wear gloves, having to quarantine the animal at home. The animal appears normal because of the high quality of life, high quality of function. So the normal daily routine for that animal continues. You can still go out and throw the ball to the animal. There's no issues with regards to safety to the owner. So, like I said, a new treatment paradigm. So we're on a solid path now, as I mentioned before, for the B-cell canine lymphoma product. We're moving to a position where we're going to file for an investigational new animal drug in the US, and then that will pave the way for us to start a field trial early next year. That field trial will be in approximately 50 to 60 dogs and should last for a period of about 12 months. The cost for that study is relatively cheap. It's a cost-effective study for then to set us up to then go and look for conditional approval from the FDA. Cost of that study is around about $600,000 US. So as I said, very cost-effective way to add value to our product, to potentially bring in more commercial interest. And the data point that we're aiming for is really around the size of the deal that was done for Laverdia by Dr Pharmaceuticals. As I mentioned before, around $64 million, but there's also royalty attached, and that's just for the US market. Let's talk about our motor neuron disease program. And this slide shows you some important statistics. As most people know, there's no cure for a motor neuron disease, or ALS, as they call it in the US, and it's invariably fatal. In fact, the life expectancy on average after diagnosis for someone with motor neuron disease is 27.5 months. Terrible statistic. What this slide also shows is that they're predicting by 2040 that the incidence of motor neuron disease is going to increase by 70%. And they suspect that's largely due to pollution, environmental factors that are causing a rapid increase in the prevalence of motor neuron disease. What this slide also points out is that there's only 4 drugs that are approved for motor neuron disease at the moment. The first drug was approved back in 1995, a drug called Riluzole, and that particular drug only prolongs life by 3 months, and that's kind of become the standard of care. It took 22 years before the next drug was approved by the FDA, and that particular drug, Radicavia, it only prolongs 6 months. Now, that seems like a very small period of time. It took them 22 years to add on 3 months over Riluzole. So again, this motor neuron disease is a high unmet need. There's very few treatments available. There's very few treatments in the clinical pipeline that are available potentially in the future to treat motor neuron disease. The real blueprint for us is Rilibriol on the end of the slide here. Rilibriol was approved in September 2022, and that drug prolongs life by 9 months. But the important aspect about this drug is that it was approved on phase 2 data. Again, prolongs life by 9 months. Approved on phase 2 data in just under 100 patients. So this provides us with the blueprint of where we're going next. There is a very good prospect that our particular drug, once we move into a phase 2 scenario, we can potentially receive accelerated approval for motor neuron disease. Just to touch on the pathology and how Monopentol is working for motor neuron disease. So in motor neuron disease, there's a progressive degeneration of nerve cells, and that progressive degeneration is all around protein aggregation. So there's a buildup of toxic protein, metabolic waste over time, leading to the rapid degeneration that you see in motor neuron disease. Monopentol inhibits mTOR, that's well established, but by inhibiting mTOR, it switches the mechanisms that are in play in cells to promote autophagy. And autophagy is a natural process that the cell uses to clean up toxic protein buildup, to clean up metabolic waste, and allow the recycling of nutrients, the recycling of macromolecules in the cell. So it's a very important process in all cells. All that monopentyl does is that it promotes, enhances autophagy. And that process is inherent in the degeneration of nerve cells, is also found in the majority of neurodegenerative diseases. So there is a chance that monopentyl can potentially be used in a range of neurodegenerative diseases. Let's take a closer look at our phase 1 motor neuron disease study. So as I mentioned, about 4 weeks ago, we made an announcement that all patients in cohort 4 had successfully completed dosing. Great result. So we're now on track to move forward and finalize the data out of this study, clean the data, and then go on that process of database lock, moving forward to statistical analysis, to being in a position to release the top line results from this study in Q1 of next year. Just wanted to point out some important aspects of this study and what we've seen to date. So when patients entered this study, it had already been 24 months since diagnosis. So as I mentioned before in the previous slide, the average life expectancy for someone with motor neuron disease is 27.5 months. Most of the patients that entered this study, the time since onset had been 24 months. Moving forward to today, a lot of patients have now been on drug for 13 months. Incredible result. 13 months. Entered the study, time since diagnosis was 24 months. What are some of the other important features about this study? Well, unlike other phase 1 studies that are typically conducted, every time you move from one dose level to the next, you generally start with a new cohort of patients. In this particular study, we've had 2 cohorts of patients that have started moving through the dose escalation phase. What that allows is for us to collect data longitudinally to the point where patients, the 6 patients in group 1, most of those have now been on drug daily for 13 months. So what have we seen in this study? What safety aspects have we seen in this study? Well, what we've seen is that there's been very few adverse events. There's been no drug-related severe adverse events. There's been no deaths. In fact, we've only seen 43 adverse events, and 3 of those are likely due to the drug. 3, only 3 of the 43. So again, a great result, and just is a strong indication of how safe this particular drug is. The other important aspect about this slide and about the study is that typically with someone with motor neuron disease, as their disease progresses, there's some telltale signs. And those telltale signs are inability to swallow and respiratory distress. Respiratory distress to the point where they require assistance through a ventilator. As I said before, most of these patients entered this study, time since diagnosis was 24 months. Most of them have been on study drug for 13 months now. We haven't seen patients show signs of difficulty in swallowing, and none of the patients have required any assistance with ventilation or respiration. Great result. What does all this mean? So we're now in a position to compete in this rare disease market. And what this slide shows is the number of deals and the value of those deals that have been done over the last 12 years in the rare disease market. And what you can see is that from 2018 onwards, The average number of deals that have been done annually for rare diseases is about 100. Why is that? Well, the reason is that big pharma are recognizing the advantages of having an orphan disease or a rare disease by getting an orphan drug designation from the FDA and other regulatory authorities. It gives the pharmaceutical company or the biotechnology company a number of financial incentives and regulatory incentives. And those financial incentives are 7 years market exclusivity for your product. Typically, when your product is approved, all drugs receive 5-year market exclusivity. You're getting an extra 2 years with an orphan drug. But you're getting regulatory incentives, and those regulatory incentives are the possibility of getting accelerated approval, using your phase 2 data to get approval from the FDA and be in a position to start selling that drug. So we're on that track where I've submitted an orphan drug disease designation to the FDA. We expect to hear back from the FDA in January next year about that orphan drug disease designation. So that then enables us to potentially start to think about being a data point on this particular slide. And as I mentioned before, big pharma are flocking to the rare disease market because of those financial incentives, because of those regulatory incentives. But they're using it as a way to get access to a larger market. So they're using it to get approval in an orphan disease, but generally that orphan disease has applicability in other mainstream indications. And as I mentioned before, because of the pathology associated with motor neuron disease, the buildup of toxic protein that causes the degeneration, that buildup of toxic protein, that process, that pathology is common to most neurodegenerative diseases. So for PharmAust's case, big pharma could see getting the orphan drug disease designation as a means to getting quick approval through the FDA for motor neuron disease, but then using that quick approval to potentially off-label prescribe into a greater market like Alzheimer's disease, like Huntington's disease, like Parkinson's disease, the various other mainstream or more prevalent neurodegenerative diseases that exist out there in the marketplace. So a very powerful slide, gives you an idea of where we're heading. It gives you an idea of the deal values that are currently in play in terms of having an orphan drug. That this is basically where PharmAust is heading. And just to reiterate some of those numbers. So Amgen, they were involved in the biggest biopharma deal in 2022 for $27.8 billion. They purchased Horizon Therapeutics. Horizon Therapeutics had 2 late-stage rare kidney disease orphan programs. $27.8 billion. To provide you with a bit of perspective on ALS or motor neuron disease, there was a deal done in September this year. That deal was a preclinical deal, not a phase 2 deal or a phase 1 deal. It was a preclinical deal. And in that preclinical deal, Takeda, Japanese global giant pharmaceutical company, it licensed a ALS, motor neuron disease, preclinical asset from Acuristem for just under 1 billion Australian dollars. Incredible outcome for Acuristem. But again, it just highlights the opportunities that are open to PharmAust following our phase 1 study, but potentially growing that value should we go on and complete a phase 2 study. So just to wrap this up and talk about the R&D timeline, the news flow, over the next 4 to 6 months, or in fact out to the middle of next year. On the B-cell lymphoma side, our Canine product, we're finalising our phase 2 study report. There'll be some more information come out around the adverse events profile for monopental compared to other products. And what you'll find is that the adverse event profile is very favourable and few for monopental. We're also, moving forward into interacting with the FDA. We've started that by filing for a MUMS waiver, and then we'll open our investigational new animal drug application with the FDA in order for us to proceed with that field trial. So an exciting time for B-cell lymphoma. In terms of motor neuron disease, and this is the program that's going to add, in the near term, considerable value to PharmAust. So as I mentioned, we've recently completed our last dose in patients in cohort 4. We made that announcement about 4 weeks ago. One of the aspects that I did forget to mention earlier on when we were talking about that phase 1 study was that in that particular study, we actually somewhat got caught with our pants down in terms of we didn't expect that study to run as long as it did. And as a result, we've had to quickly put together an open label extension study. What that open label extension study does is it enables those 12 patients to roll over and for us to continue to collect safety data and efficacy data for another 12 months. The exciting thing for us is that all 12 patients want to continue on the study drug and be involved in that study. So we should receive ethics approval and for that study to start early next year. In terms of next year, in Q1, as I mentioned before, we've moved forward with our orphan drug designation filing. We hope to receive advice from the FDA that that's been granted very early on in January next year. We'll then move forward with a pre-IND meeting with the FDA to propose what our phase 2 study is going to be to open the IND and then move forward with that phase 2 study. Q1 is also when we're going to release the top-line results for our phase 1 study. So a very, very active quarter for PharmAust. And then in Q2 of next year, as I mentioned, after filing after having the pre-IND meeting with the FDA, we'll move forward, open the IND formally, and begin our phase 2 motor neuron disease study, hopefully towards the end of Q2 next year. So very exciting time for PharmAust over the next 4 to 6 months. Rapid news flow coming out, rapid progress for both B-cell lymphoma, Canine program, but more importantly, a number of value-adding milestones coming up for the motor neuron disease. Thank you for your time.